Okay, pine trees are usually 50% to 2/3 the width of the height. Okay? Because if you ever watch a pine tree grow, it always grows higher than it does wider. So eventually that all carries through. Now these trees, if you build to this size here, these trees scale it to 50, 60 feet, which is normally a standard size for a full-size pine tree in a commercial forest. So if you're doing Europe, most forests in Europe are commercial forests. Okay, because lumber is a big thing there, so not like here where it just grows anywhere. So anyway, that being said, we'll get on to making trees. So there's, sorry? 35th. Like I said, they'll scale it to 50, 60 feet. Right? So, and like I say, when you're doing width will be anywhere between half to 2/3 of the height. So, because 50 feet is normally a rough estimate for a commercial forest, that's why these happen to all be that size. But you can make them a little smaller, you can make them a little taller. Okay? Keep in mind, no two trees are the same, so don't try even to make them look all the same. It doesn't happen in nature, so don't try it. Don't try it, this way. So, first I want to start out saying this is not my idea. I saw this on a YouTube video from a German guy. All I've done is modify it. So let's start with what you need. First thing you need is a dowel. Okay? If you notice this is crooked, so what? Trees are crooked as well. You can buy I think a 3-foot length at Home Depot for $1. Okay? So what you do, you cut it to roughly 16, 18 inches, and I'll explain a little later why. This is the glue I use, the LePage's. Don't use the industrial strength adhesives, guys. It's too thick to start with, and it also has a color in it. Okay, so we'll discolor some of your work that you're doing. So don't cheap out. Use the craft spray on adhesive. Okay, and there's a few around. I don't know them all. 3M, LePage's. I don't know who else there is. Okay, Elmer's. All right, but do not use the industrial ones. Okay, don't go to Home Depot. You got to go to a craft store. Now, the hardest part of this is actually the most important ingredient, and that's sawdust. The sawdust, I'll put it on here so you guys can see it, is about the consistency of play sand. Okay? Now, the important part of this sawdust is you can't use 2x4 studs and just cut them up. The sawdust has to be dry, otherwise it clumps when you start sprinkling it on. Okay? It also, because there's the resin in the pine trees, it also affects your work. So get a piece of wood that's actually dry, like for finished lumber, like for cabinet work or something like that. You can't use a skill saw either. The sawdust is too thick. Okay, so basically what you have to do is you either use a file or a very, very fine saw. Okay, usually about 32 teeth per inch. All right.
Where did you get yours?
I made it. I had I made about a liter's worth in a day with a sawzall and a big 4x4 piece of wood I found that was completely dry. So anyway, so next thing is,
if you have sawdust that was made instead of a 2x4, if you wait to let it dry out, will that work in the end?
No, because the resin's still in there. You know the tacky stuff when you work with fresh wood? That's still in there. And it really takes a long time to dry out. It honestly does. Okay? So the next important part is the wire. This I got at Michael's. And you're going to want to use anything between 22 gauge and 26 gauge. Don't use anything bigger, and definitely don't use anything smaller. Okay, that will make, it's probably enough for 4 trees. Okay, and it's like $3. All right, so next step, after you have your dowel cut to length, is you have to pare it down. The guy on the video was using a knife. I don't suggest it. Because if your knife is too sharp, you will cut into it, and you'll go through these like crazy and it'll snap off. I did this with a very fine file, a wood file, and I just kept paring away. And the bonus of it is it also makes the sawdust at the same time. Okay, so what you do next, you drill a little hole in it to start your wiring. Assuming you can find it. I know it's here somewhere. There it is. So you poke that through. Okay, you poke that through. Now, all pine trees, the first little bottom part is dead branches. Every pine tree you look at is dead branches on a full-size tree. Okay, so I'll start making, I don't know, maybe an inch and a half. Twist around 2 or 3 times, and then you're going to double back. Doesn't matter how long you make this, it's relevant. Okay? Then 2 or 3 times, and then you're going to stop. And what you're going to do, you're going to take this twist, and you're going to twist it tight. Okay? And that's what this is for. Okay? Cheap pair of pliers, I think they were $5 at Walmart. Okay, give it a little twist, don't overdo it, because the wire will break if you overdo it. So you just give it a little twist, just enough so it's snug. Okay? And then what you do, you're going to keep twisting the wire around to 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch. So every layer will be about 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch, and then you put a set of branches. Now, you can make 2 types of trees. If you see here, you got branches that go all the way down to the floor, but you also have this type of tree. And in Europe, the reason they do that is because they want the growth to go into the height, so they take off the first about 20-25 feet of branches so that all the growth goes into the tree itself. Okay, so either way, you have to allow for it. Now, the part I did forget is whatever size tree you're making, you got to make it at least 2 inches longer because you need something to hold the tree with. Okay? So, whatever size you're making, add another 2 inches. And you're going to lose that after. So as you go around and around, we're not going to do this all, because this is going to take forever. So you just keep pushing down and keep it compact. The cleaner you make this, the easier your life will be afterwards, and I'll explain why. Okay, so you just keep going up and up and up, and then you end up with something like this. So, that is the finished product. As you can see, there's no rhyme or reason to how long the branches are or anything like that. Now, the other thing you got to remember on pine trees, you usually have anywhere between 4 and 6 branches. You usually don't have more than that horizontal coming out of the trunk. If you look at most pine trees, you won't see more than 6 branches. Okay, so you work that all the way up. Like I say, length makes no difference in this case, as long as the bottom is obviously longer than the top when you're done. Okay, but it's not important that, oh, this is 4 inches and up here is 2 inches. Because you're going to come to a stage you're going to make that all pretty afterwards. Okay, so then the next stage is the bark stage. And the reason you don't cut these wires is because they're a little difficult to see. Once you do the bark stage, so you spray adhesive all over the center, try not to get on the outside, but go up and down the center, and then you sprinkle the sawdust on there. Usually it takes 2 or 3 applications. You can do a little more if you want, but don't get too carried away, okay? Don't worry about unevenness as far as bark and all that goes, because it looks more natural if you just leave it, okay? So now you can see that the branches are visible. Right? So now at this stage, this is where you cut your branches to size. Okay? Now keep in mind, it's a tree, so it doesn't grow uniform. Okay? So there's no, oh, it's got to be perfectly triangular. Okay? You can be missing a branch can be a little longer, it can be a little shorter. There's no fixed rule. Okay? So after you've done this and let it dry for about 24 hours, the next step is cut all these, spread them out, and then look at it, and then start cutting your tree to shape. Okay? So after that, this is the next stage. This is what I call the branch stage. And as you can see, it doesn't look much like a branch right now. So what this is, it's these two products here. It's 12 millimeter and 6 millimeter static grass. And don't go out and buy the $100 static grass applicator. You're wasting your money. Dollar store. Make sure it's the fine one, okay? And the way you make it act the same way as the static grass applicator, go 6 inches above this, and as it falls to the floor, okay, it actually lands properly. Okay? Now, at this stage, when you're doing this stage here, you have to remember something. Okay? And this is important. This stage here, you're doing everything upside down. So you're going to spray your glue down this way, you're going to put your static grass this way. Okay? And I'll explain that a little later why. Right? So you just keep doing that, and usually 2 or 3 applications does the trick. Okay? So and then
So your first layer, you got some grass on there, you spray more adhesive on top of
you spray adhesive. Okay, sorry. I skipped steps ahead. So you spray the adhesive all over this from this side down. Okay? Sprinkle the static grass, and you gotta wait a good hour. Okay? Then you do the next application, and then the next application.
So you're spraying and then
Spray grass, spray grass. Okay? Now, very important thing, which I learned the hard way. When you're doing this is your most important product in this thing, newspaper. Because as you spray, because there's a lot of overspray, spray, put down a fresh layer of newspaper, then do the static grass. Because if you don't do that, all the static grass that drops to the floor will stick to your newspaper, and you're going to go through a lot of static grass. It's also the same principle with the sawdust. Always put a fresh layer of newspaper after you spray. Okay? Otherwise, you're going to go through material like crazy. I learned that the hard way. Okay? So anyway, so you end up with this. Make sure it dries for 24 hours before you go to the next stage. Okay? So, what you do next is this stage. It gets painted brown. But before you paint it brown, you have to get all the, I call it needles, get them to go downwards. Okay, so you take your hand very gently, put it between your fingers, and just start stroking it down. Okay? Then when you're going to paint it, you can use any paint you want, but you don't want paint thicker than the consistency of stain, wood stain. So if you're using modeling paint, you want to thin it down at least 50-50. Okay? And you can do this, again, a couple of times if you're not happy. Okay? But don't use full strength paint. Okay? It will ruin the effect because these things won't stay nice and fluffy if you do that. Okay? The most important thing is, after you do this, 72 hours minimum. Don't do it before. Okay? And the reason for that is the adhesive glue will start softening up the paint, and you'll end up with a big clump. Okay? So minimum 72 hours to let the paint dry fully. Okay? And then you're good. So that's that. And then we come to the final stage. And now, as I was telling you with the other one, you're gonna spray from the bottom down up for the brown. This one you're doing it backwards. You're gonna go from the top down with your spray. Okay? And the same thing. You're gonna sprinkle the spray this glue, put a layer of newspaper down, sprinkle the static grass. But for this, you're only using 3 millimeter. Okay? Don't use anything longer than 3 millimeter. This stuff is great. You get your money's worth. Okay, it's a lot cheaper than the German stuff. All right? So, all right, and again, you do 2 or 3 times, depending on how you like it. Now, a lot of people were saying, well, this looks like a dead tree. So you could stop here if you wanted to. Okay? It could be a dead tree if you wanted to. All right? So anyway, that's a finished tree. Okay? So what you have to do normally is sometimes some of the branches stick a little bit together. If it's not too tough to go apart, stick your hand in and just run your hand through it. If it's a little tougher than that, just get a little pair of scissors and cut it. Okay, don't try to yank it. Otherwise you'll yank the grass right off. Now I was going to explain to you why there's a top and a bottom application. And the reason for it is you have to sandwich the wire between the static grass. Okay, so if you only go from one direction, it has a tendency of peeling off on you. But if you sandwich it between the two, it doesn't peel off at all. And I could do this, nothing comes off, it's perfectly fine. You can bump it, it doesn't disintegrate. You can bend it afterwards if you want, if, you know, for whatever reason. Okay, this is, you know, very versatile. Okay, and it looks all right, I guess. Now, also when you're at this stage, if you want to stop here, it does need a little weathering. Okay, if you've ever noticed, pine trees change with the weather. And I know it sounds silly, but they do. Their color, when it's bright sun out, will be a lot lighter than when it's a dull gray day or raining. They'll turn very dark. Okay, even though it's the same tree, nothing changes. So when you're deciding what color to use for your tree, as long as it's some form of green, and it's not like a light green like that, you're not really wrong. You also have an option of like a turquoise. Just lightly spray a turquoise, so it could be a blue spruce. Okay? The trunk, different pine trees have different trunks. There's red-brown trees and there's grayish trees. So when you're finished at this point, if you want to do the trunk highlighted with gray, it's not a big issue. Okay? But again, don't use full strength paint. Use like a stain consistency. So 50-50. Okay? But be careful. This readily. Okay, so you have to be careful how much you put on there. But again, screw it up. Okay, put the brown back on, start over again. Okay? So that's a finished tree. See you in the summer. Perfect. Now, this is a winter tree. And the way this is done is the same idea. You use the spray adhesive. You spray from the top down. Okay, but this time you're going to use something called Sheetrock 90. And what Sheetrock 90 is like a plaster. It's a little stronger than plaster of Paris, but what I like about it, it doesn't yellow. Okay, it does not yellow. It stays white. So what you do,
it starts out as a dust, or
it's a fine powder just like plaster of Paris. Okay, it's actually a little finer. You can't use this because it's too fine. Okay, it will just pass straight through. So just shake it on and wait a minute or two, then shake off the excess. And unfortunately this snow, because it's so fine, actually takes about 4 or 5 applications, depending on how heavy you want the snow to be.
What is that product called again?
Sheetrock 90. It comes in a little bag. Don't buy the big box. It comes in actually a 50-pound bag as well. But Home Depot sells little bags for the homeowner, and I think it's like 2 kilos. And the nice stuff is you can use it for snow, and you can use it for all your dioramas, because it's just like a plaster. Okay? The reason it's called Sheetrock 90, because it gives you a maximum of 90 minutes to work with. And what the nice thing about Sheetrock 90 is, it's an improvement over Durabond. Durabond was rock hard, yellow, and couldn't be sanded. Sheetrock 90 sands beautifully. It doesn't crack if you don't put it on too thick. It doesn't yellow, is the other bonus of it. Okay, and it's far more chip resistant than plaster of Paris. So anyway, like I say, so this is probably 4 or 5 applications. Now, if you build a tree that goes right down to the ground and you want to do a winter scenery, don't put snow underneath the tree, because snow doesn't go underneath the tree, because the branches will keep it down and it makes like a tent. Okay, so underneath directly would be no snow under the tree, or very, very little. So it's just something to keep in mind when you're doing it. Okay, so like I say, it's very straightforward. Okay, there's a lot of steps, I understand that, but you also can't make only one tree. If you're going to make this, make at least 4 trees minimum, because it's not worth the effort. Okay? So, Anybody got questions?
On this step here, do you actually wind these loops together?
Sorry?
You see at this tree where there's loops. Do
Yeah.
you wind these?
No. What you do, hang on a second, Roy. Let me get this back as a whole. No, what you do, this is all already wound. If you look at this one here, have a look at this. It's wound at the trunk.
Yeah.
Okay? What you're gonna do, you cut this and you spread it out. Okay? So the way I do this normally, the first 2/3 are 6 branches. When you get to the top, it's only 4 branches. Okay? Because you don't need as much coverage. If you look at a tree, it's not as bushy at the top as it is all the way down.
So these, you would be cutting these.
They get cut
Okay.
before you put the static grass on, right? So that's how you're gonna shape your tree before you start. Because otherwise you're gonna waste a lot of static grass, and I don't know what this stuff is worth. I think this stuff is $11, okay? The other thing I forgot to mention, the branch portion of this, you have to go 2-to-1 mixture of 12mm to 6mm. And the reason for it is I found that works better. The guy on the video, he had 1-to-1, and I didn't like the result. It's a lot better if you're using more 12mm than 6, because you get a fluffier tree. Okay, and coverage is a little better. All right, but unfortunately, the only people that make 6 and 12mm static grass are them and Fuller. So you have to go to a German company, and I don't know who carries it. I know John's Photo Hobby does, but I don't know who else. Okay, I don't know who else. All right, so any questions? No?
Great job.
Thank you.